Today, I'm here with Chris Dulnikowski, one of the principals and owners of Ruland Design Group, and we're going to talk about coastal overlay zones, what they are, what they mean, and how you can still build an ADU if you live in one. So, Chris, welcome to Maxable's YouTube channel. If you want to introduce yourself just briefly and tell us a bit about Ruland, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, Gabe, thanks so much for having me here. We love ADUs. My firm, Ruland Design Group, we've been in business for over 23 years. And when the laws changed back in 2017, we really wanted to focus on ADUs. There was not enough housing here in San Diego. And since then, we've grown our team and we designed over 400 ADUs. And the city told us more than anybody else in San Diego. So we're excited to share all that knowledge that we have garnished from over 400 projects and kind of walk through the ins and outs of what to do if you live near the beach.
Awesome. So Chris and Ruland Design Group have helped hundreds of homeowners design their ADUs. So Chris has a lot to say about what she's seen and what Ruland sees in general. So just to get started on coastal overlay specific, coastal overlay zones, what is a coastal overlay zone in California?
So what you have is at the state level, we have the Coastal Commission, and they are an organization that works with multiple municipalities, and they have defined a swath of land that's close to the beach, all up and down the entire state, that has a little additional requirements in terms of development. Because the focus of the Coastal Commission is to protect our wetlands, protect our beaches, protect access. And so the Coastal Overlay Zone is an area that is mapped out. You can Google your map and see if you're in it or not, that has additional requirements. So you're both working with the building department in your local city, and then a coastal review if you are in the coastal overlay zone.
And so we're here to talk specifically about our passion, both of our companies and what we do, which is accessory dwelling units. And so what I'm getting from that is that you can build an ADU in a coastal overlay zone, but there are additional requirements. Chris, what are some of the restrictions or regulations you see specific to coastal overlay zones?
So what we typically see is parking, height, and view corridors. So again, depends on where in the coastal overlay zone you are. Closer to the beach, more restrictive. Parking is probably the biggest challenge. Height sometimes, and then view corridors is something we watch out for.
And view corridors means you are restricted from building certain heights and certain sizes that may obstruct neighbors or even your own view.
Yeah. So, if your neighbor is up behind you and you're on a little bit of a hill and they have a perfect ocean view, you can't put a 3-story right in front of their view.
Yeah. I can imagine how that can be a contentious issue for a lot.
Yeah, they would not be fans.
A lot of beach views from the beach. And in terms of the impacts that this has when you're thinking about building an ADU and you realize you're in a coastal overlay zone, you work with a great designer who understands that, and that's the role of great ADU design firms like Ruland Design Group, who from Maxable, we've partnered with dozens or hundreds of times to deliver for homeowners. But when you work with these homeowners, what is the usual timeline extension that you should expect in the permitting process if you're in a coastal overlay zone?
And that's probably the number one thing to think about if you're in a coastal overlay zone, is just time. It's more time, and it's not going to make you happy. Depending on how close you are to the beach, a more straightforward review that the city does, you might look at 2 or 3 or 4 more months on top of your building review. If you're in a more complicated area, it could easily be 1.5 to 2 years. And it is absolutely not unheard of to have a 2-year review with the coastal department and then go through your building department review.
So does the coastal department review tend to happen before the building department review, which the building department review, as you and I know, is required for every ADU built in the state of California. So that's normal. That's for everybody. But if you're in a coastal overlay zone, is that review period before the building review period or after it?
In most situations these days, it runs with it. If you're in a very specific area in the coastal overlay zone, it happens before, and that's your couple-year review. But in general, I think the most part that we're seeing for coastal overlay ADUs is now running in parallel with the building department review, which saves time overall, but it's still going to be a few more months.
Yeah, and maybe it adds some complexities to,
Yeah.
so you might have to go back on
Definitely.
the building review if you have got a change in the coastal
Yeah.
overlay.
It's
so
not
you mentioned,
it's not an absolute, you can't do them, but it absolutely does have complexities.
and you said that the largest consideration for a homeowner in a coastal overlay zone might very well be the timing it takes to get a permit and to check all those boxes. Is there any impact on cost for the actual permitting or pre-construction process?
There can be. So there's typically an additional fee if you're in the coastal area. Sometimes it can be a few thousand. Say, for example, if you're in Imperial Beach down here in San Diego area, Imperial Beach, not super close to the beach area, it's a few $1,000s and a few months more for the review on top of your regular permit review. Now, if you're extremely close to the beach area, it might run you up to $16,000 additional on top of your permit.
Okay, got it. So it's mostly a time consideration, but there are sometimes significant costs associated with just the pre-construction phase.
Yeah, and not all coastal overlay areas are treated the same. You know, sometimes, again, closer to the beach, that's more complicated, more expensive, and longer reviews. A little bit farther away from the beach, but still in a coastal overlay zone, the requirements are a little bit more manageable.
And what about, let's talk a little bit up and down the coast. We have homeowners reaching out to, working with Maxable all the way from near the Oregon border, obviously in the Bay Area and LA area, and then San Diego. So how are there, you talked about proximity to the beach. What about geography in terms of coastal overlay up and down the coast?
So pretty much every municipality all along the entire coast of California is going to have a coastal overlay. That just goes in the entire state. You just have to be very watchful of your own specific municipality. You definitely want to reach out to them, figure out if you're in the coastal overlay, and get specific to that municipality, because the next town over might have very different requirements, even if you're in the same coastal overlay zone.
Awesome insight. And then what about getting into the actual design considerations? You talked about building height, views, and parking being three of the main considerations that coastal overlays sort of impose additional restrictions on. Any tips for designing successfully for the coastal overlay area?
Absolutely. And I think you want to start with your goal for the ADU. If it's for family or if it's for rental, then the design is going to go down two different paths. Now, also the area in the coastal. So if, like in our area of San Diego in Pacific Beach in PB, you're going to have a lot of younger people, more roommate situation, not necessarily families. And so that then drives the number of bedrooms and bathrooms and how we approach that design. Again, if you're for rent and you're in a place that's super, super dense, then a lot of times our clients actually just want to add parking as a rental amenity, even though they may not have to. So you want to look at the demographic, who you're going to rent to, or if it's for family, and parking is sometimes that amenity. And then a lot of the times, just take advantage of the view. If you've got some view, that's where we're going to line up the living room window, and that's where we want to maximize when you walk into the space, is to have, take advantage of it instead of hide it.
What's the craziest story you've heard about a coastal overlay, or you've been involved in, or Ruland's been involved in?
Oh, we had a good one. We had a good one. So this is city of San Diego. So we have Mount Soledad in La Jolla area. And so it's this big hill, beautiful view. I walk into the guy's house and I was like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. Floor to ceiling, 18-foot windows all the way down overlooking La Jolla shores. I was like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. And he's perched on the hill. And so he's like, I want to put an ADU down there on the hill. I was like, I'm like, how? So we hiked down there, and this actually won a design award from Maxable, actually. And it's a complicated, design. So we designed an ADU 2-bedroom, 2-bath, like 900 square feet that he thinks he's going to rent out for about $5,000 a month. And made like the whole front just open up to the ocean. And it was beautiful. Went to the neighborhood planning group. They're like, where are the construction trucks going to park during construction? And we're like, on the road. They're like, nope, not good. No, we reject it. So the neighborhood planning group rejected this ADU project because the construction trucks won't have a place to park. So I'm like, that's awesome. Now, of course, the building department just ignored them, but that was probably one of my favorite ones where they're like, oh, where are they going to park? For the construction.
And so,
like,
awesome. if the building department still came through and issued a permit, were they able to build?
They're building right now.
They're building now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I can't wait to see it.
We'll make sure to highlight that either in this video or a future video.
That's where you have to fight the neighborhood planning group that are just mostly a lot of not in my backyard kind of people in general. And then they're like, oh, they want to pretend, to do a lot of influence when it's like, yeah, no, we meet the requirements. We meet all the requirements. So no, you can't say no. And they say no anyways, and then just get ignored. So it's like, but that took like 6 months of reviewing with them, giving them more information, giving them different views of the plans, going back for another meeting. And so it just delayed things.
And in that case, with the new regulations in the state of California, can an HOA or a group like that prevent ADU construction?
So that group could probably still do it because coastal is coastal. And that's the argument I'm having with Imperial Beach right now on a different project. Now, HOAs, they can't say no, but they can absolutely limit you. So that's something where, like, you might not be able to convert garages. If they have some sort of bylaw that says you can't park on the driveway, well, then you can't convert your garage because then where are you going to park? But for the most part, the HOAs are going to control the setbacks, how big it is, what it looks like, but they can't say no. But that might rule out still several people where it's like, if I can't convert my garage, I have no other room. And then, we're currently arguing between coastal and city reviews because of a parking requirement in IB. And they're like, you can't, if you convert garages, you have to provide 2 off-street parking spaces. And I'm like, the garage wasn't big enough for 2 cars anyway. So why do I have to add parking when I'm trying to create an ADU? So now this is the argument of who takes precedence. Is it coastal or is it the city? And is the coastal going to prevent an ADU? And is that going to then go against the state guideline that says you can't not have an ADU? So it's a quagmire a lot of times.
Quagmires are why great designers and design companies that focus specifically on ADUs are so important. And that's what we try to
if you don't know this, you're screwed.
Exactly. If you're a homeowner trying to navigate this, or if you're a homeowner trying to navigate it yourself, you're in big trouble. But even if you go to an architectural design firm that specializes in some other form of development, whether it's commercial or large scale, McMansions, or a lot of them don't know the specifics related to ADUs in coastal overlays. Or
even now, a lot of companies that are popping up that are like, oh yeah, we do ADUs. You got to go through a lot of different ones to figure out the nuances, and it's not just, the building department is going to tell you the answer at the first conversation. And that's where, we leverage our 400 ADUs like hell, because otherwise it's the nuances will just burn you really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's something we'll keep on pushing homeowners to really understand and factor in their decision-making processes. There's not much that beats just experience, a lot of reps. So Chris, thanks so much for your time today. Your expertise after designing 400 plus ADUs with Ruland Design Group really shines through. So thanks for taking the time to educate homeowners who are watching this on coastal overlay zones. At Maxable, we strive to be the best resource for homeowners who are considering ways to maximize their property. Often that means building an ADU. We specialize in connecting homeowners with great partners like Chris and Ruland Design Group. So thanks for watching. And Chris, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our community.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. We're just here and happy to help. So if any of your clients and people are interested in learning more about ADUs from the design perspective, we're right here for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris.